आप लोग अपना अपना मोबाइल में खोल लीजिए लिंक। So today and tomorrow we will be discussing mainly the compositions. So whenever as a cinematographer or as a director, you want to take up a shot, first thing you have to do is to place the camera. Now, how do you do that is a question. So on the set, director would decide the shot taking. Don't look into each other's mobile, look into your own mobile. Okay, everybody has a mobile. It was sent via email also, correct? So look into your mobile, get the link. So whenever you want to decide on the set, you're going to take a shot, whether it is going to have a camera movement or whether it will have a static shot. Everybody can hear it over there on the mobile. Those people who are online, can they hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Am I audible? Can anybody confirm, am I audible or not?
Yes,
Yes,
you are.
sir. Yes, sir.
you are audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Shall I hear? Can anybody hear? Not you, these people. Okay, they are hearing. Fine. So we'll go ahead. So golden ratio. There are various elements of composition. Whether it is a camera movement or whether it is a static shot. It is not the cameraman who decides what is going to be the shot. Shot taking is not cameraman's domain. Remember it. It is the domain of director. I will show you some shot from the same position, how differently it can be composed. So it is not a cameraman who decides, it is a director who decides how the shot need to be taken, and hence director should understand the composition. They bar recording in progress. You guys just mute the sound. That's it. Okay. So first is the shot taking. First is the shot taking. And if a director doesn't know shot taking, cameraman will understand immediately and you will lose 50% of your respect. If you don't know shot taking, cameraman will understand quickly and you will lose 50% of it, 50 of it. It means you are not technically aware. And composition is not a technical game. Try to understand. Composition is a aesthetics. It has to do with the aesthetic. It is no mathematics is there. So on the opening, you might feel that some ratio and all those things are there, but they are just occasionally you will encounter these kind of things. So first thing is to set the frame, and framing means composition. I am assuming that your shot is static. There are many shots in a film. If you see carefully any film, not always camera is moving, not always characters are moving. You will find 25% to 30% of the shots are static, in which camera is not moving. And if camera moves, then also the same composition rule will also apply. So first is the golden ratio. Today and tomorrow we will discuss that, which will be helpful for you to become a director and cinematographer and those who are appearing in FTI entrance exam. If you look into the direction course paper, they ask a photograph appreciation as well as they also ask a painting appreciation. Same can also be asked with the cinematography student. So first is the golden ratio. So what exactly is the golden ratio? So I'll just remove this thing up there. Okay. So golden ratio basically add elements to your frame along the spiral and at the point where the spiral ends. It produces a beautiful harmony and perfect balance in an image. There are certain abstract terms which we'll be discussing today and tomorrow. So you need to be a little open for that. So technically, if you ask what exactly is a golden ratio, you can say that, but it is much more than that also. This is a little more notes for you. So the golden ratio is basically an irrational number that approximately equal to 1.6, which is also known as a golden number. If you look into the various aspect ratio of the frame for the cinematography, your normal television ratio is 1:33. Then it is 1.6, which is called wide gate. Then there is a European wide gate, which is 1.85. Then you have a cinemascope, which is 2.3. So there are various aspect ratio, and this is considered as one of the ideal one. As that's why the word golden number. But earlier it is used to be 1:33 for television, and for wide gate it is a 1.6. So the 1.6, where the 1.6 came from for the aspect ratio, this is come from the paintings basically. So for artistically mind people, the ratio, or better yet, the divine proportion might be easier to understand visually. This is easier to demonstrate with the golden spiral, which is often depicted and constructed within a rectangular frame. In our artwork, this ratio creates a pleasing aesthetic through the balance and harmony it creates. जो पहले हम लोगों ने बात की हुई है वहां पर. Finding the golden ratio requires just a short series of measurements. First, divide the canvas into the 8 equal sections by having it several times. Next, draw a vertical line at the, this is the way how the painter calculate. Draw a vertical line at the 3rd section from the left, then draw another line horizontally at the 5th section from the top. This can also be reversed and applied to any composition in the 3:5 ratio. ये नीचे एक आपको diagram दिखाया गया है किस तरीके से divide करना होता है and how you make this spiral business. As a cinematographer and as a director, you don't have a privilege and a time to do it on the set. So what do? You do it mentally. Mentally, you need to figure it out. So how you do it mentally? These are the famous paintings in which golden ratio is applied. Rodin, famous the thinker sculpture hai, girl with a pearl ring. That this is one of the famous painting by the Japanese artist. All these paintings have this golden rule, Annunciation by Leonardo da Vinci, then Parthenon. These all, including Mona Lisa, Venus, all these paintings are having a golden ratio rule applied in some way or other, but ये कहीं दिखाई नहीं देता है. You have to imagine in your mind and figure it out which direction. ना तो vertical है, ना horizontal है, कभी-कभी ये angular भी है. Like in this Dutch painter's painting, you can figure it out. So these are the various rules. One of them is a golden. Now the rule of third. This is the most popular rule in photography. Very often you have to apply this. So considering that golden ratio 1:6, 1:6 basically should arrange your composition so that most of the interesting part of the scene fall onto the lines or where the line intersect. अब ये थोड़ा सा समझना पड़ेगा इसको, and it comes with a lot of practice. ये भी वहां पर फ्रेम नहीं बना होता है कि आप जाके उसको डिवाइड करने बैठ जाए वहां पर. You should be able to figure it out. Roughly, it is going to fall over here. So again, these are some of the images which I have collected from you on the internet. You will find many more. So you can see how the placement of this lady. Again, there is something called looking space also. In this one, looking space, 2/3 of the space is left empty. Similarly, again, simple tree. Then you can see this again, rock in the sea. अब इसके अंदर कोई आदमी बहस करने बैठ जाए कि सर ये तो आपने फोटोग्राफ के अंदर एग्जैक्टली फोटोग्राफर ने 1/3 जो क्रॉसिंग वाला पॉइंट है वहां नहीं रखा है फोटोग्राफ. इफ यू लुक एट द मेन इंटरेस्ट, वहां उसने नहीं रखा है. So why he has not done it? Because it is a bigger mass which need to be balanced with the another mass. We will talk about this term called balancing also in a frame. कि अगर वो इसको यहाँ रखेगा फ्रेम को, मान लीजिए इस तरीके से कंपोज करेगा, then the balance would get disturbed. So to have that balance, he has somewhere roughly around, he has placed in that corner, and then these two small rocks are balancing the frame. So balance is a very, very important thing. Now again here also you see exactly the photographer has placed at the 2/3 of the position. बहुत सारे लोग अब बहस करने बैठेंगे कि looking space जो direction है इसका, looking space is toward the right. So mostly we say looking space, there should be a more space over there, but here it is 1/3, not 2/3. Like in a previous photograph, where that lady is looking in that side, here the looking space is this side. Okay, but in this one, looking space is left only 1/3 rather than the 2/3. Why? Because in the back you see this green chunri kind of a thing is flowing, you know. So in order to include that part, you have to leave only 1/3 on the right, despite the fact it is not giving enough looking space. Because if you wanted to give a looking space, then this whole damn thing will be cut. Try to do that in your photograph, this will be cut. So in order to include that, the flow is being kept very carefully. Now look at this space also. Again, a portrait. Here, the looking space is not left on the right side. Looking space is left on the left side of the frame, so that you can balance that thing. Again, the similar thing. So these are the things which you will practice, and you will come to know easily. It's like a driving. Once you start learning, it is difficult to put the gear and change the gear and all that kind of a thing. But after you practice, it becomes very simple. So these are the various elements you have to collect, and then as per your requirement, you will use them on and off. Not always all the element has to be used, but some of the element would be used sometime, not always. But basic rule of third, they are like namak, mirch. Whatever you do, you always put that, right or wrong. But there are certain kind of masalas which you will not use it every day. There are certain masalas which are meant for something specific which you are cooking. अब तुम पिज्जा बना रहे हो तो उसमें कोई धनिया थोड़ी छिड़क दोगे ऊपर से. तुमने देखा किसी पिज्जा के ऊपर धनिया डाल दिया आपने. But if you are making your aloo gobi, you will put the dhania over there. So similar thing, you need to collect your masalas, and as per the usage, you should be able to use it. Then there is something called C curve. So in this curvilinear kind of a photograph, you see how the object of interest, this is a bus which is going to enter. Up iske andar, there is something else also you need to understand. This is not a very good photograph for me because this bus is about to enter. Had it been a little more toward this side, it would be more visible. This photograph is about basically the bus who is entering in this C curve. So decisive movement is the one when you really have to click it. This is an advantage in still photography, that you can click 5 frames per second. In a continuous mode, you can click 3 photographs. One at this position, little bit, bus will be after that, then the bus will be after that. And out of those, you can choose which is the best position. So this is not the best position, but positioning as such of the overall composition is being explained in this C curve thing. Then you have these circular things, you know, the circles. Ab koi bolega yahan to circle dikhai nahi de rahe humko. So it will not be seen. You have to visualize that how this image is forming some kind of concentric circles. So these are the elements which we are talking about. Converging line. This is very often you will see in the images. Wherever there are lines, are they converging to a point, and see how they are converging. So this is a symmetrical image also, in which converging lines are also there. Then you see the diagonal lines. All these trees, there are zigzag kind of curvilinear lines are there. Then you have this decisive movement which I was talking about just now. Many of the photojournalism, suppose there is an essay called write a important point about what a photojournalist take care of. For example, if a question is write 4 important points which a photojournalist need to take care of. One of them is a decisive movement, when to click. Now this boy is about to jump in this river. Now suppose that it is standing over there. Would it be that interesting a photograph? No. Because there is a dynamics over there which is being added by jumping of this boy, and maybe this jumping point could have been a little more inside. Depend upon, you have to try a couple of times and do it. Today there's an advantage because there's a digital photography. Earlier there used to be an exposure. If you waste it, you're gone. Out of 36, you waste your 1 exposure. You have to be very, very sure when to click the button. So today there is a lot of advantage. So decisive movement is the most important thing in photojournalism. When you are about to click, I saw a photograph in which Can you imagine Amitabh Bachchan crossing a road and entering into small two pipes and coming out of it? Can you imagine? But I've seen that photograph. Somebody shot a photograph of Bachchan crossing the road, entering into the two small pipe and coming out of that. So how that photographer would have waited for that moment, he must be following him, and he clicked at that particular point. Can you imagine Bhimsen Joshi holding his ear like this? I have the photograph. I have that photograph in which Bhimsen Joshi is holding his ear like this. How it happened? Because somebody requested him, ek aur, and he said enough. And the moment he said enough, I clicked. But how do you know by that time you set up? No, always your eye has to be on a viewfinder and your finger has to be on the click button. Otherwise, you will miss the moment. Frame within frame. This is a very, very important thing in cinema. Many a times you will see frame within a frame. Film within a film. Film within a film, frame within a frame. So how can you create a frame within a frame in cinema? Give me some example. Any film which you remember in which frame within a frame is there?
So the Bond shot.
When you
The
say
classic.
something, people should be able to understand. Okay?
Yes, sir. The
Which is-
iconic shot of James
Specify
Bond
a particular shot. Then people
Yes,
would understand.
I
If you just say every film has something, but if you don't specify, people will not be able to understand. So frame within a frame, how can you create it in a film? If you want to create a frame within a frame, how can you create it? One of the way is use of the mirror. Mirror is something, if you place the mirror in the frame somewhere very strategically, you could create a frame within the frame. This is one of the technique which I have observed many of the filmmakers uses. There's a Fassbinder from Germany. Many of his film has that use of a mirror in cinema. Why a mirror is being used in the cinema? Quote 3 examples from 3 different films which you have seen in which mirror is being used. पूछा जा सकता है कि तुमको FTI नहीं जाना, जिसको जाना है वो लोग लिखेंगे वहां बैठ. Okay, so we'll move further. Use of mirror is a very, very important technique which people have used very often in judicious manner, but it depends if it is required or not. So frame within a frame. Here it is not a mirror, but actually it is within that bigger frame. You have an opening and you can have that thing. Triangular image. So this is again something where you need to visualize where exactly is the triangle. And as I said, that there is no line you can draw it, but you need to wait for a moment when this bird would be here. Now, if the bird would have been not here, but in the center, the picture would have gone. This also include a decisive movement. Then that is what we talk about. So when we are going to talk about a appreciation of a photography, you have to look into these elements that this particular photograph has what, and then you describe. It may have a 3, it may have a 4, it may just have 2 only. Okay. Last time in FTI entrance exam, they picked up a photograph from Raghurai's photograph in which big stone is there. Then there is a guy who's sitting over there, a famous magician, and with a sitar. And then there are people who are walking in the backside. And then there is a cloud. So these are a couple of elements which you need to connect. Now rectangles. Now if you look into this, we call it as a graphic. We also call these kind of images as a graphic, in which now you can see they are small. There are vertical rectangles, then there are horizontal rectangles. So these kind of images make more interesting image. So if you have rectangulars, if you have a circle, we call it a graphic. We will be discussing those images also, where the photograph is having a graphic quality. So this is an image which has a graphic quality. Placement of the horizontal line. It's a very important thing, how you're going to imagine what kind of, suppose there would have been a crowd, it would have been better. But in general, empty foreground in which nothing is happening is considered as a bad photo. So if you keep more of a space in the foreground where nothing is there, then it is considered as a bad photograph. So try to exclude the foreground until unless it has a interesting. So here, if you look at it, foreground is very less. Then you have a middle ground where there is this shop is there or some frame is there. I think it is a shop or something like that. And then you have a sky and the background you see the birds and sea. So placement of these horizon lines is very, very important. How you place it will make a photograph good, bad, or okay. Now, this is a most important thing called leading lines. Most of the photographs will have something which will lead to a object of interest. So what is the object of interest? There's a small house somewhere in the mountains or landscape, and you see all these road kind of a thing which leads to the house. So how you place this thing, suppose you crop this image, for example, from the right side, you do not include that much of a part. And if you shoot this photograph vertically, will it have that impact? No. In still photography, you have an option of shooting vertical or horizontal, but in cinema, you don't have an option. You have only one option called horizontal. So leading lines, you look for a leading line into a photograph. Then again, there's by mistake, similar kind of photograph which we already shown over there. Similar kind of photograph is also there. Horizontal placement, like here it is being placed centrally, but to me, too much of a space is being left over in the foreground. Had I been composing it, I would compose a little differently, but depend upon how much is the area you wanted to focus on, what is your center of interest. Now, this is something which you need to, this is also an element of balance. When you are looking for a balance in the photograph, you also look for this element called juxtaposition. Now, imagine this statue is not there. For example, imagine the photograph where the statue is missing. I might compose it in such a way that I avoid the statue. Then what would happen? Then the balance would be missing. So also, this is a juxtaposition in which one element is being juxtaposed against the second element. So here, the statue is being juxtaposed against these two people who are walking into this garden somewhere. So this is very important, that how you create a balance. This is also an element of balance by juxtaposing the two elements. Then you have a sense of scale. What is a sense of scale? When you compare something with something else. Now, if this lady who's running over there is not there, then you will understand that is a big structure, but how big it is, you will come to know only when there is some scale to compare. So you have a scale to compare is basically this lady, you know, it could be a 5 feet, 6 feet, and then you compare the rest of the, imagine, then you compare the 6 feet multiplied by 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So if the girl is of 6 feet, for example, then we have 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 multiplied by 6 times, more or less, and you roughly understand that this is the height of the architecture. Sorry. Okay. Reflection is something which very often people use that in cinema also. Reflection does not mean always mirror. Reflection always not means mirror. Reflection can also be in a glass. Reflection can be in any shiny surface, which means a water. So either water or a glass surface, reflections are there. Sometimes you have to create reflection, sometimes you have to kill the reflections. Both things are there. So to kill the reflection, you use the polarizing filter, and to create the reflection, whatever reflections are falling over there is there. Sometimes you really have to create the reflection to give the feeling of a glass. How do you know it is a glass over there in these frames? All these frames which are hanging left, right. How do you know there is a glass over there? Because there is a reflection. If the reflection is not there, it may not have a glass also. It may not have a glass. So glass will give the feeling of a reflection. So I have seen sometime a cinematographer create a reflection in a glass to give the feeling of the depth also. There's another element, how we create a depth is through the highlight shadow. So by creating a reflection in the glass, sometimes you cut the glass. If you look at the opening sequence of Knife in the Water, what is so great about that film? Opening sequence, because there is a reflection of trees coming left, right, left, right, left, right. And at one point in a single shot without cutting, you see the faces of two people clearly. How it would have done? They would have used the polarizing filter at the off position first, and then slowly after the person who's sitting over there, he would have given a time of 30 seconds, 1 minute or 2 minutes or certain number of time, and after that he changes the position of the polarizing filter. So earlier polarizing filter was at off position, and after 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes, it comes into a correct position. Since it is rotating in front of the lens, nobody will be able to notice. Only you notice is the reflection has gone now. This was a very tricky shot, which many a times people don't notice. It takes a lot of time to watch the film again and again. That is the beauty of Knife in the Water in the opening sequence. I have asked many a times this sequence. People who are appearing in FTI entrance exam, they might show you a film like this in later on, and they would ask you what is something which you notice in the particular shot. So coming to the reflection again, now you look at here how creatively somebody is using a mirror where it look like as if his body is gone. Again, in photography, many a time people have used it. So it's a broken mirror in which somebody's face is there and somebody's hand is there. And then you see in the background something else. Again, as I said, the water, you can see a very simple photograph of road where reflection of two buildings nearby is seen. Person's head is also seen who is taking a photograph. And you see a decisive movement, as I said, a plane. A plane is also there. But this plane can also be added later on in the post-production, which means in Photoshop, you can go and have a plane over there. There are certain things which you can do in that also, but I assume that this must have been done at the time of shoot. Person must be waiting, must be knowing that plane will cross from this point. Maybe at some point he would have noticed, otherwise it could be a Photoshop also. Nobody knows. Okay, again, a very interesting photograph. You could diagonally placed where the face of the person is hiding because of the camera, but it's an interesting shot in terms of use of the mirror. Again, use of the mirror, you can see somebody is holding from the hand, somebody is from the finger, and then you see somebody's eyes into the thing. So this is abstraction, how you create a abstraction in a photograph. Abstraction is something, those who are appearing for FTI, they might ask you in the orientation, go and shoot an abstract photo. Go and shoot an abstract photograph. So how you create abstraction? Something like this. Okay. Again, use of the mirror. Not a very high resolution photograph, but the idea is being cleared. Reflection in the water, as I said. Shadow. Shadow are the very important part in times of black and white photography. Does not mean in color photography, shadow are not important. Black and white photography were more important. In color, it is also equally important. Particularly when you create any image, you always look into the how much detail you want into the shadow area. You want it to be a pitch black, or you want to be seen little bit. So shadow area details are very, very important. How much shadow you want. And because of the shadow, you also come to know what time it is. They might ask you, write 6 important points about shadow. For example, if I ask you, write 6 important points about the shadow, you should be able to quickly figure it out. It gives you the mystery. Shadow also create a mystery. If you are standing in a shadow, suppose, for example, I don't know whether you are holding a gun or not. Right? So it creates a mystery. It gives a mystery. Shadow also gives you the feeling of time of the day. Suppose the shadows are long, then you know it is early morning or late evening. If it is a day, then shadow would go down because the sun is at the top. So these are the 2 quick points I've told you. But at the same time, it has, like, for example, if I would frame a question, I would say, pick up the 2 scenes from 2 different films where the shadows are used metaphorically. अब खोपड़ी खुजानी पड़ेगी खोपड़ी। जब पिया जाएगा वो खोपड़ी खुजा सकता है और लिख सकता है, वही जाएगा। जो नहीं खुजा सकता खोपड़ी, वो कहीं और जाओ। So think of the film in which shadow is being used very creatively. I'll tell you offhand very quickly question. There's a film by Raj Kapoor in which one of the character who is a villain, his shadow fall on the Raj Kapoor. And you know that this character is going to be a villain in the future. Okay. So that's the metaphorical use of the shadow. Also, sometime if you have seen, say for example, there's a film by this guy who made a couple of films in which there's a single shot in which the song is being picturized, and somebody kills somebody else, and you don't show who these people are. It is just the shadow. You show that these 2 people are, somebody has killed somebody else. Okay. So you can use shadow in a different manner. So, but in cinematography or otherwise also, you try to create shadow for giving a depth. Otherwise, purpose of shadow is also to give you the depth. Otherwise, it is a flat. When you say flat photography, what does it mean? There is hardly any shadows. There is no highlight, shadow. When we say why it is a flat photograph, because it do not have the shadow. So shadows are very important thing. 5 important point about shadows. You can write it down. Few I have told, few you can think of. Again, you see this staircase, very simple photograph, but just because of the position of the sun, you get these pattern of light falling on the wall. You move a little further, you see this, how interestingly somebody has used this image. It may be Photoshop also, I don't know. Again, at some point we will do the practical and where we will create pattern. This is pattern we will also discuss soon, and how through a simple light, use of this object which has given a certain shadows falling on the base, which is of maybe a black color probably. Shadows are very, very important thing. Sometimes how you create a shadow, there is a particular scene in which I used to work with Ashok Mehta. This is an article which I have written long back in my magazine also, that how Mehta ji created, deepen the shadow. How you can deepen the shadow? By using those Rangoli colors, and he used that color which was matching with that, and he put those colors over there, and the shadows become very strong. Otherwise, it was difficult to create those kind of hard shadows. Technically, we can create, but sometimes it is not possible. So he wanted to deepen those shadow of that pattern falling on the ground. So he used that material of Rangoli of a little darker color and spread it very carefully over there. It took half an hour for us to spread that material very carefully. And if somebody from outside will come and he will not be able to figure it out, that this is not a natural shadow. So sometimes this is the reason why you need to assist to learn these small techniques. This is a very small technique. There is no circuit diagram, but it will not strike in my mind had I been not over there. How to deepen a shadow which is not deep enough right now. Though through light, cutters and all we can create it, but it was not, he was feeling that these shadows are not deep enough. So he used that Rangoli material. There was colorful Rangoli material because it was a sequence of Diwali happening over there. I think it was a Moti soap commercial. So how some other material, by spreading that material on that shadow part, you could deepen the thing. So these are small technique as a cinematographer. Why Ashok Mehta is a great cinematographer? This is one of the reason he applies his mind. Many people don't apply. They go cutter lagaya, key fill will kiya, apna thok thak ke aage. Okay, tonal quality, tonal contrast. Tonal contrast is the difference in brightness between separate element in an image. It gives you a photo depth and separation. दो चीजें हैं इसके अंदर, depth and separation. दोनों अलग-अलग चीजें हैं. एक सिंपल सा फोटोग्राफ हो सकता है जिसमें डेप्थ की जरूरत नहीं है, but there is a separation from the background. Why we light up the background, for example, one of the point why we give the backlight to a character is the separation from the background. If the backlight is not there and suppose the background is also dark, you may not be able to separate the character. So tonal contrast का मतलब यह है, this is the man. कोई आदमी बताएगा इसकी शक्ल देख के कौन आदमी है ये? 40 लोग पार्टिसिपेंट हैं, 40 में से कोई आदमी जागा हुआ है यहाँ पर?
एंसल एडम।
शक्ल देख के बता सकता है कौन आदमी है ये?
एंसल एडम।
बहुत सारे लोग, बहुत अच्छी बात। इस आदमी का नाम है एंसल एडम। एंसल एडम is one of the greatest photographer America has produced. Zone system की जब बात होती है तो एंसल एडम का नाम आता है। तो 0 and 1 in between there are midtones. Many of his photograph, or rather I would say most of his photograph has that tonal quality of gray shades. So जब भी पूछा जा सकता है जोन सिस्टम के ऊपर, राइट ए शॉर्ट नोट ऑन जोन सिस्टम, जब के अगले तैयारी कर रहे हैं उन लोगों को पता होना चाहिए, तो नहीं कर रहे हैं उनको भी बताओ। ओके, तो हमने पहले बात की थी बैलेंस की, अभी इसको और थोड़ा डिटेल में हम लोग बाद में बात करेंगे इसके ऊपर, बैलेंस के ऊपर। देयर आर सम सेपरेट पीपीटीज व्हिच आई हैव डिस्कस्ड इन द पास्ट। हाँ जी, so balance in a composition can evoke harmonious feeling and uncomfortable and feelings. Your choice between the two should be deliberate. क्या मतलब हुआ इस बात का? सपोज यहाँ पर अगर मैं इस फोटोग्राफ को ऐसे शूट करता जिसमें ये छोटा सा बॉक्स नीचे जो रखा हुआ है ये नहीं होता, I could have included only the building, this and this shutter. So this small element is balancing these two windows. ये जो छोटा सा बॉक्स रखा हुआ है यहाँ पर, this is balancing these two windows. और जो बड़ा वर्टिकल शटर है, इसके पीछे जो बिल्डिंग दिखाई दे रही है, again is a rectangle up there. This rectangle is balancing this shutter over here. So one rectangle balancing another rectangle, two horizontal rectangle is being balanced by a kind of a square object. So this is a very interesting example of the balance. This is a very simple photograph in which this balance word is there. In SRFTI particularly, last to last year, they gave you an abstract topic and go and shoot the photograph. उसमें balance हो सकता है, rhythm हो सकता है, harmony हो सकता है. These are very abstract topics, and you have to understand them very carefully. Only then you can shoot a photograph. Otherwise, not. So we are discussing here all these elements so that you can write about them if the question comes over there. Normally, one photograph question should come, but you never know. Silhouette. 5 points to shoot a silhouette photograph. 5 points to shoot a silhouette photograph. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or they might say, what are the important points you will take care of shooting a silhouette photograph? So silhouette का मतलब ये होता है, the main subject is in dark and the background is brighter. Brighter in the sense, it could be a sky, it could be a plain white background, it could be anything, but it has to be bright background. Detail in the subject are not clear. अब तुम्हें पता लग रहा है इन दो लोगों की शक्लें देखकर कौन है ये लोग जो चल रहे हैं यहाँ पर, नहीं पता, right? So silhouette के लिए सबसे पहली चीजें है कि subject should be in dark area, and then when you expose basically for the bright area. Bright area अगर मान लो यहाँ पर ये लाइट अगर इनके फेस इन दोनों के ऊपर भी पड़ रही है, then it is difficult. So you need to cut down the light on the, or you wait for the area or time when the sky will be much more brighter and there is hardly any daylight over direct sunlight, I would say. So that is the time when the sunlight is not falling on the characters, and on the background the sky is brighter. So you will see many of these photographs like this. Silhouette photographs are being taken in a time when it is a sunset. Okay. But artificially, if you have to create, like there's a music video of Jussie which I shot many years back. The artist was not there. So what we did is we asked the composer, choreographer to stand in front of the window, and it was a inside mill over there where we created the darker area, and when we made bright the background bit more brighter by adding some artificial light through the reflectors. Sunlight we bounced back on the background so that it will burn out more or less, and we got that. So if you see any video of the Jussie, it's called Nishani. Neetu gal vich pale Nishani ardi, that is the song in which you see a silhouette effect, which is supposed to be the Jussie dancing over there, but it is not the Jussie, it is a choreographer who's dancing because it is in a silhouette. So this technique, you should be able to use it on and off. Of course, they copied that music video from the Michael Jackson's idea, but that also have the silhouette effect over there. But from wherever it is copied, you should be able to create what the director wants. So you can see here, again, these are a little more interesting photograph, how interestingly they use this idea as if they are putting the sun into this Kura Gadi, and that's it. These are small, sometimes people have some little fun by having these kind of pictures. Again, you see the details are missing from the subject. In artificial light, inside, now you can see this is a model which is against the light. There's no light falling on the character. Even if small light you can see on the face, but it is hardly any exposure. If you take exposure reading, you will not find it even F2 for the face, and background being white and directly hitting the glass, directly hitting the lens. So must be 32 or something like that. So the image which you get is something like that. So it's not exactly silhouette, but yes, you can feel the contour of the lady, and of course, detail of the face is missing. Again, as I said, that sometimes people have fun like this. This is also called false perspective. Remember, we also call it as a false perspective, in which it looks like two people are holding the sun. Nobody can hold the sun because it's too big. But in the image, it looks like as if they are holding the sun. If you go to the Taj Mahal, you see people holding the tip of the Taj Mahal and getting their picture done. So we call it as a false perspective. We will discuss the perspective here at some point. Again, now it looks like as if somebody is eating the sun and somebody is putting through that damn thing. This again, this image we have already discussed. Okay, quickly बताइए ये इमेज जो है कौन सी फिल्म का इमेज है? डायरेक्शन के लोग 41 में से 20 लोग डायरेक्शन के जरूर होंगे यहाँ पर, बोलिए जिनको FTI जाना है
The seventh seal.
वो लोग इस इमेज को देख के बताएंगे कौन सी फिल्म का इमेज। अब तक नहीं बता पाए इसका मतलब पता नहीं है। If you are not able to crack within 5 seconds, it means you don't know. दिमाग मत लगाओ, दिमाग तब लगाओ जब तुम्हें पता हो। ये मास्टर इमेज है उस फिल्म का, ये उस फिल्म का मास्टर इमेज है। अगर तुमको जिंदगी में वो फिल्म तुमने देखी है तो उस फिल्म का नाम है सेवंथ सील बाय इंगमार बर्गमैन। तो वहां तुक्का नहीं लगने वाला। जो लोग सो रहे हैं वहां पे बैठ के और सोच रहे हैं हम तो FTI चले जाएंगे, बहुत आसानी से, इतनी आसानी से नहीं जा पाए। जिस आदमी ने सेवंथ सील नहीं मालूम इंगमार बर्गमैन का, इसका मतलब उसको बर्गमैन की फिल्मों का कुछ अता पता नहीं। एंड दिस इमेज हैज बीन यूज्ड ऑन द पोस्टर। अगर कोई इमेज फिल्म पोस्टर पे इस्तेमाल की गई है, इसका मतलब वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। जब भी सेवंथ सील की बात होती है, वो इमेज आज सर्च करना गूगल में जाके सेवंथ सील इंगमार बर्गमैन इमेजेस, आपको ये वाला इमेज दिखाई देगा वहां। तो हो सकता है कोई मुझ जैसा टेढ़ा मेढ़ा आदमी पेपर सेट करे तो वहां पे एक इमेज दे दे हाई कंट्रास्ट, बोले कि बताओ किस फिल्म का है। तो जो लोग सो रहे हैं जाग जाओ, अभी 18 दिन और हैं, और नहीं तो 1 साल बाद जाग सकते हो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। So gentlemen, this is brief about what we have discussed so far. Then I'll move to a next PPT. If you have any question, you can quickly ask. चालीस लोग अगर यहाँ पर सुन रहे हैं, otherwise I'll move forward and you will not have an opportunity to ask. Okay, so I suppose everybody have understood everything. Good. So I'll stop sharing this image, then I'll go to another PPT and we'll see how we can have another quick. Just give me a moment. Okay, composition, contrast, this composition. Screen, share screen. We'll go and share. Okay, here we go. So whenever you set a frame, angle is the very important thing where you're going to set your frame. So we'll talk about the angles and other small other elements which we discussed in the previously. So low angle. There's a difference between a low angle and low level. Low angle and low level are two different things. So first, as I say that low angle, we can see, if you imagine the lens has an axis. It has an axis. Anything which is a circular thing has an axis. Okay. So if some beam is coming straightway forward, so for example, red color beam is coming. If it is horizontal to the horizon or earth, then it is not a low angle. If it makes some angle with the horizon, then it is a low angle. When you tilt up your camera like this, it is making a certain angle with the ground, and then the photograph will be called as a low angle. Okay. So some of these images you could see here. Architecture image, again a low angle image. Again a low angle image. Low angle image. Low level image also. This is a low level. Why? Because eye level, there are different things. Please try to understand. There's an eye level, which means normally you stand at a 5 feet, 6 feet. That is considered as a eye level. Normally when you stand, you are at a 5 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, whatever is your height. That is, if you keep a photograph, if you click a photograph like that, that is called eye level. But now you are going below. This camera you are keeping at a height of 3 feet. For example, this photograph may be at 2 feet, could be 1 feet above the ground. So this is a low level. So the level of the axis of your lens has gone down. It is not at a 6 feet, 7 feet. It is at a 3 feet or 2 feet. So that is called low level. Now this is a low angle. There is a Sudharak Polve. He was a photographer in Times of India for many years. And then he had an exhibition in Delhi. It's the India Habitat Center. This photograph, long back, I shot it. It's a lady called Susan Brestford, who is a chairman of Ford Foundation. So these people came over there because India Foundation or something like that name is there, who sponsored this event. So this is a low angle photograph in which he is explaining the photograph to this lady. So this is the image which is a low level again. Any Brahmgyani among 42 people, 40 people who are listening to this thing is from which film? Can somebody identify the name of the film? It's a very famous film. Emily. So this is from Emily. Top angle and high angle. Both are different things. Both are different things. Low angle, which I was talking about earlier, if you look at the song of a Bandini called Matro Ma Lal Bahtere, it is a person is going to be hanged and he's walking in the corridor. He's walking in the corridor of a jail. And you see entire song, I would say 75% of the short song is picturized at a low angle. Because low angle, this can be another question. What are the significance of various angles? When you take a high angle, low level, there should be aesthetical reason also why you are doing that. So one of the reason of low angle is to show larger than life. Suppose that person is going to sacrifice his life for the country. Okay, so that entire song is being picturized. I would say 75% of the song, wherever that character is there, is being picturized in a low angle because he's going to sacrifice his life for the country's sake. So sometime you wanted to give larger than life image, or as I said, that sacrifice is for the country is something which you want to heighten in that particular song, and hence the entire song was picturized in a low angle. So occasionally it happens that people use these aesthetical consideration. So top angle could be absolute top or it could be a high angle. If you see some of the Antonioni, Michelangelo Antonioni is an Italian director who has a very interesting way of shot taking, in which the camera will be at a high angle and you see the character entering from the center of the frame into the frame. Center of the frame into the frame. So if you see Antonioni's film, then you will find this kind of shot taking also, which many of the filmmakers I have seen. He has this unique way of high angle shots in which character would enter from the camera. So this you can call it as a high angle, but top angle is something which is absolutely top. Again, this is, I would say, again, a eye level or low level. Now, eye level from the point of view of the lady, if you say, but actually, since the height is less than 6 feet or 5 feet, I would say if it is at a 4 feet, for example, then it becomes a low level. Then it becomes a low level. I would not say this is a low angle, but I would say it is a low level. So these are the various angles which we discussed just now. We'll move to another thing which is called top angle. The top angle is absolutely top. For pack shots, particularly of the product shots, top angle is one of the technique which very often you will see products are being shot with the top angle, because you can see clearly all the things and also the shape. If it is a circular, if it is a semicircular or elliptical, shape can also be seen. Top angle is very useful for the product shots. Again, crossing of the people you could see here. Again, a top angle shot look very interesting. In a hospital, you see these two people, one person sitting, she's pushing this cart, other people moving from here and there. So top angle is something which is, again, this is a pack shot, product shot of still life, I would say, where how meticulously they have used these variety of cups, the plates to put all these kind of grains and the other material. And very methodically, they have organized these material. So fruit is, now this is again a, I would say, high angle, but not the top angle, I would say. Again, the position of 1/3, if you cross those lines and put it over here, you will find it is again following the rule of 1/3. Again, a top angle shot, very simple shot, but look interesting because it is shot with the absolutely top angle. This is again a high angle shot. And again, the leading line and those things are there. Very simple, minimalist kind of a shot, in which position of the chair is at the golden rule 1/3. Perspective we were talking about earlier. So how you can create a perspective in a photograph? That is also important to remember. Not just talking about perspective, but you should be able to create a perspective. And when it is required, why you wanted to create a perspective? A, when it is required. So suppose somebody has killed someone and the revolver is important, that's a clue, for example. So you wanted to give an emphasis on that revolver. So you go wide angle first of all. You have to use the wide angle shot. Go closer to the object, whether it is a revolver or some object, other object is there. In this particular photograph, it's just the dividing line. We wanted to emphasize on the dividing line and how this road is leading towards that mountain over there. So this is the leading line also at the same time, diagonal composition. And here it is a perspective because he wanted to emphasize on this yellow border line, which is dividing the road into two parts. So wide angle, closer to the subject, at a distance which is minimum focusing distance. You can't go beyond that because it will become out of focus. Now here it is, everything is in focus. Also because you are using a wide angle lens, so depth of field is also there. So you're utilizing these elements to create the picture which is in focus from the foreground till background, but at the same time give you larger than, if you calculate in terms of the percentage wise, you calculate the percentage of the area occupied by this yellow mark. And if you look at the area occupied by the mountain backs, you will find this area is much more than that mountain. But actually, which is not. Actually, it is other way around. Mountain is much larger than this small mark. But photograph has created a feeling that this is bigger than the mountain. But we subconsciously knows that the mountains are always having a much more bigger size than this thing. So this is the way we create the perspective. Wide angle lens, closer to the subject, and keeping it in a focus. And because you have a depth of field, so if you do that thing inside the studio, it will be difficult. Why? Because you're shooting with a low light level. So shooting f2, f2.8 doesn't make sense. You have to have a f16 or f22 aperture so that you can get the maximum depth of field. So to have a maximum depth of field, you have to shoot outward. So that's one of the points they can ask you. Write 4 important points to create a perspective. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you should be able to clear it out. Again, the same thing, you can see the mountain as well as the jhalpatti in the front. Size of the jhalpatti is bigger than the mountain, but actually it is not, since he has given the illusion. Same over here, you see this warning over there for these dogs, and then you see these cottages, but size is much more, almost equal to the size of the cottage. But in actual, you know that this size is not true. This is lesser than that. Similarly, you see this bigger one and then a smaller size. Okay, color. I have seen many photographs in which colors are missing and they are shot with a color camera. Very carefully, if you see many photographs, colors are not there, though it is shot with a color photograph. So prominent color is, you can look at this photograph and quickly say that this prominent color is yellow, blue, and red. With a tint of red, small tint of red here and there, but prominently 2 colors are there, the shades of yellow as well as the blue. Again, the one prominent color, greenish, just the apples, you can see blood red color is the prominent color. Then we say graphic. What is graphic? Graphic is basically line, curve, rectangle, square, circle, ellipse. All these geometric shapes are called as a graphic photograph. So you can see those kind of things. See, here you see these curves over here, left, right, left, right, left, right. You could see these hexagonal nuts over there. Okay. So this we call it as a graphic photograph. of course, there's a highlight and shadow, what we just discussed earlier, that there are shadows and there is a highlight. If the sun position is not missing, is not there, at this point, you may not find these highlight over. And hence the depth would be missing. Separation of different planes, there are different planes in which these circles are being placed. So how this tire, maybe it could be a tire of a truck, I don't know. But there's a circular object in which nuts are being used, and you could see this half of circle is being there. Again, it's a top angle shot of some building where you could see these curvilinear lines as well as these lead lines which are leading toward the opening of the entrance. And inside also you could see the circular thing. So when we say graphic image, which means how the element of these geometrical elements are being used over there. Same over here, it's again a kind of leading line over there, and decisive movement when this guy would come over here and will click, but may not be, he's not moving on that. Again, this is a kind of a false perspective, because he might be going at the back side and this should be in the front, and then the photograph was clicked at the point when his feet is about to touch that corner. Now, this is something which is very, very interesting. Patterns. What do you call pattern? Pattern means where the highlight shadow, or whether it is a very sharp or whether it is very disorganized. These are some sunlight coming through some tree over here. Okay. So if the tree is not there for example, then patch of light might hit completely on the entire body. It might hit part of it. It depends upon the position of the sun when you're taking a photograph. So outdoor photography is very, very dependent on the position of the sun. Yeah, that's why we do the recce. This could be a question people can ask. What is the purpose of doing a recce? When a cinematographer goes to a recce or a director goes to a recce, what is the purpose of doing recce? Write down the 4 points of, write few important points of doing the recce. One of them is to find out the position of sun, because there could be a window. Sun may be coming in the morning or in the evening. The patch of light would fall either morning or evening. If you are shooting in the evening and patch of light comes in the morning, then you are not utilizing the daylight entering into the building. So to utilize the maximum daylight entering into the building, we do the recce. So that we know, this is the one reason. This is one reason only. Second reason is whether it is suitable to shoot or not. That location is suitable to shoot or not. It may have a low ceiling. It may have some other problems. So to figure it out, the problems of shooting, which you will encounter at the time of setting up your lights and other thing, that's the second point of doing the recce. There are a couple of more points which you can think of very easily. Since it is a light class in the composition, again, silhouette kind of effect. You see this patch of light falling inside this room where the dog is being placed, and also in the back side. Now this back pattern is doing something else also, which I want you to add, and I have not mentioned here, is called relief. We call it as a relief. Relief is something which will give you the depth. Relief is something which you give the depth and also makes the photograph more pleasant. Now imagine this patch of light on the backside is not there. Will you get the same feeling which you're getting now? No. So this we call it as the relief. Relief is something which will add pleasant to the eye and also give the depth in the photograph. Particularly in a night photography, anything in the background. Sometimes you light up when you're lighting it up. Sometimes you just hang a small bulb at a large distance. Why you just hang a bulb? Because it gives you the feeling of relief. It may not be having enough intensity. It may just fall some light here and there, but it will give you a feeling of relief. So do the photograph have a relief? So if somebody writes in this photographic appreciation of this, that this patch of the light falling on the back side is giving a feeling of relief and adding the depth to the photograph. He will secure more marks because he is highlighting that particular point over there. So how many points are there, for example, in the photograph, and how much you are able to notice them? That is what they are looking at. Now, I'll quickly take these images of our craft. Now you can see the patch of light is falling on the ground. Coming from the front area, patch of light is falling on the ground. But also all the bulbs which are hanging are being on. These bulbs are, light is on. in the daytime. So you also get a little relief over there. Now look at the same photograph where the patch of light is falling on the wall. Same location, but the patch of light is falling on the wall over there where these jars are being kept over there. Again, outdoor, there's a particular time in the early morning when this patch of light will fall on this board. If you don't come here at 8 or 8:30, you will not find this patch of light. If you go outside and feel here now, you will not find it. Simple steps and pattern of a light hitting over there. So these are the small things which you need to notice in a photograph. Is there any pattern of the light over there in some way or other? Again, a pattern of light into this corridor. Again, a very graphic image. You see these curvilinear lines up there, horizontal lines. All these are the elements. Again, the same place, pattern of light falling on the left side of the wall. You see early morning, patch of light is hitting little bit of these chairs as well as the wall and front part of this area. Now look at these two photographs carefully. What is the difference? Same position, same shot, but the difference is that somebody has included the chair in the foreground, and the another photograph right side, there is no chair in the foreground. So same position, two people setting up the frame will have a different composition. If it is a vertical frame, and also in the first photograph, you don't see this iron shutter, which you can see in the right photograph. So what you include and what you don't include is totally up to you. As a director, you would decide what you want to include. Cinematographer will improve upon that. Cinematographer will improve upon that. Again, the same photograph, you could see the patch of light hitting, but I have included this path on the right side also. But I have avoided the left side portion. I have included the right. So this is a director who decides how his frame would be there. Again, the same position, I have lit up I have switched on these bulbs in the front one, not the back side. So this is a little difference. Exposure is one thing which is very important. Now look at these two images, same position, everything remains same. On the right side, the background is a little more brighter, and hence I would say this is a better exposure than the left. So correct exposure is also important, whether the photograph has a correct exposure or not. Again, these two last images, look at this image 1 and look at this image 2. What happens? Image 1 is a little overexposed, because of which the green is not saturated. But look at the second image, green is much more saturated. So this is a correct exposure, and the first one is a little overexposed. But unless you don't compare, you will not feel it. If you don't compare, you may not feel it, but if you are experienced one, you will figure out this is a little overexposed and this is the correct exposure. So these are a few elements which I wanted to discuss with you. Post, now it's almost 11:33. We'll meet at 12 o'clock and then we will discuss a little further. हाँ जी बोलिए.
There is a dog photograph, the lead one. Sir, would it can it be considered also like a balancing of the shape? Like it was balancing the shape.
Moment. So I have to share that thing here. Just give me a moment. Okay. Fine. So here we are. Now these things are little abstract in nature. What we are going to discuss today, now post break. This is particularly if you qualify the written and some of the cinematography student. These are the things which they assign you to do. So these are the abstract concept. Contrast is very simple, everybody knows it, but what we are going to discuss today is more of aesthetic consideration rather than the black and white contrast we talk about. But in general, contrast could be not just the black and white or detail in the shadow and highlight area, but it is more of something else. So we'll discuss that. First, the literal meaning of the contrast. So you could see the black and brighter area, dark area and brightness. So when we say contrast, this is something which strike in our mind, which is dark area as well as brighter area, darkness and brightness. So darkness and brightness is very literal translation of the contrast, but when we use in a metaphorical sense, it could be anything which are diametrically opposite. For example, a rich man versus poor man. Okay. So this is something which is metaphorical. So we'll show some of the, also in a contrast, we talk about the color contrast also. Whenever we talk about contrast, say for example, you look at the back side, the logo of the craft, for example, is with the background of something which is of a lighter color. So with the lighter color, it is a kind of merging with it. But had this color would have been some other color, it would have stand out. Like the way you look into the other three images, the blue color against the yellow stands out. The white line inside that stands out. So when we talk about the contrast, we also talk about the color contrast also. There's a color theory for it. Last year, I was looking at the paper of FTI. In the art direction question, they asked some very interesting questions which are useful for the cinematography student also. Not just the art direction student, but also for the cinematography student. Those who have not seen the paper, kindly go and have a look at it. So that's one. Now, if an image like this comes, what you're going to write, that is equally important, because there you have to write it down in a limited words. So the dark solitary tree contrast against the bright sky. There are two kinds of contrast over there. So brightness versus darkness. Also the solitary tree against the bright sky. The absence of other element enhances the perception of contrast. The texture of sky adds interest to the picture and makes it lively. Now, these are the terms which you need to understand how you're going to describe. If you have to write down something, you have to describe in words. There you will not be physically present. So those who has to write the paper, they need to write something like this so that it gives you a marks. Again, image which is of somebody where there is a fixed and flow. Water is flowing and the person lying in the foreground is fixed. Will you call it as a perspective image? I'll ask a question. Would you call this as a perspective? There is something in the foreground? No. Why? Because this is not shot with the wide angle lens. This is shot with the maybe normal lens of 50 mm or something, because the image in the foreground is not closer to the lens. It is in the foreground, but not closer to the lens. Try to understand the difference. Something which is larger than its actual size. What the point here? Actual size is very small if you look at it. So the shot is not taken with the wide angle lens closer to the subject. Had it been low level, closer to the face of the person with a wide angle lens, then you would have called it as a perspective in terms of depth. But here it is a normal shot, high angle shot. But again, it is a contrast in a different sense of the term. So contrast can be achieved in many ways. Here the man asleep on the beach creates a contrast mental image of what is expected. The shore and the sea builds a homogeneous background, while the person sleeping stands out in the foreground. It is in the foreground. Okay. The sense of contrast is also perceived if the waves are viewed as lines and the human figures as a dot. Not exactly dot, but in terms of the angular line, if you look at the angular line that way, we will not call it as a dot because it is not very small object. It is quite a perceptible. So this is not a correct description, human figure as a dot, but since somebody has written it, so I've just. Now look at this image again, a silhouette kind of image, because it is shot in a daylight time where this detail in the boy's face is not seen, and he must have exposed for that. And because of that, you see kind of silhouette effect. But in a full day near the beach, you will not get an image like this. Okay. So again, this is an example of contrasting darkness and lightness. As I said, silhouette is also something in which foreground is completely black. As the image has been shot at the noon with the almost overhead sun, the boy appears nearly black against the brightly lit colors. of the sand and the sea. The sense of movement and the action of the boy generates a curiosity among the picture. ये एक philosophical statement है. The sense of movement and the action of the boy generates a curiosity about the picture. You may not be able to write something like this, but if you are familiar with this kind of this, and also will not give you more marks because this do not describe something which is very, very peculiar about the photograph. Now this anybody can write it. It may not generate the curiosity. किस चीज की curiosity है? The sense of movement and the action of the boy generates a curiosity about the picture. क्या curiosity है? What is the curiosity in this picture? Curiosity, when you say, means something which is somebody is hiding something, which you are able to, would like to view that. You know, it is not that. So I would not say curiosity, but yes, contrast is there. Now again, the color contrast. Look at the red, blood red color. It's not a very good photograph also, because anything in the foreground which is out of focus looks bad. Here you see a little bit of a head of someone. Okay, so this kind of photograph in the foreground should be avoided. And you cut the foreground and then you have this image, it will be much better image. So an image is sometimes seen with associated imagery. When one sees a picture of bleeding head in our mind, it contrasts with the image of a normal non-bleeding head. The image creates a sense of contrast not between the elements in the format but with the image in our mind. ये बहुत interesting वो है कि what kind of image comes in your mind when you look at the head. When you look at the head of someone, you see a normal head. अब मैं आप लोग मेरे चेहरे को देख रहे हो तो तुम्हें लग रहा है कि यहाँ पे ब्लड निकलना चाहिए था, ब्लड नहीं निकलता. Normally you see a photograph or a person with a non-bleeding head. That is the image which you have in your mind. But here you see a image which is contrast to your normal image. So contrast does not mean within the frame itself. Contrast could be a बहुत interesting point as photograph के अंदर. Contrast with what you have in your mind. You have in your mind is somebody non-bleeding head, but here you see a bleeding head, right? What is the image which you have in your mind about the lips of a boy without lipstick? तुम में से कोई एक आदमी कल लिपस्टिक लगा के आ जाएगा, and if you take a photograph of that, you will have a different feeling. It is a contrast to what you already have in your mind. Okay, something which is normal and something which is abnormal. So contrast from what you have in your mind and you see something which is against your preconceived notion. Contrast is that also. ये बड़ा interesting example है उस point of view से. Again, flow versus fixed. Here the contrast is something is flowing in the background and something in the. Ernest Haas नाम का एक photographer हुआ है जिसने blur के ऊपर बहुत काम किया. Blur के ऊपर Ernest Haas की book देखेंगे आप तो आपको मिलेगी. So this is again the contrast of flow versus fixed. So contrasting character and material quality creates the perception of contrast in a picture. Here the movement of water contrasts with the static nature of the log. Also the soft versus hard. Also the soft and liquid nature of the water contrasts with the hard and solid nature of the wood. Water is basically here is a liquid, but water can also be a ice, which means hard, and water can also be a vapor. So water has a 3 state of existence, while most of the object has only one. Okay. So, but what we see is a flow. So it's a flow versus fixed. Again, this image is interesting from the point of view of what is in the foreground and what is in the background. Plus all those people on the top of that mosque somewhere, I don't know where exactly this picture would have been taken. So there's a contrast of attributes of the stone in the foreground and background. Attributes ka matlab, it is scattered. And when the same stones are being used into a monument, they are fixed. So scattered versus fixed. मान लो तुम्हारी किताबें आप पढ़ी हुई है, इधर उधर पढ़ी हुई है, और there is a rack over there in the back side. So if you take a photograph of the books in the rack, but books lying on the ground. So this is scattered versus organized. Disorganized versus organized. So when we say contrast, both the things are important. Foreground and background, though the stone here is a common element, the constructed or unconstructed aspect in the image becomes the contrasting element. ये scattered है, which we call unconstructed, and there it is being constructed. Which we can also use a different term called fixed. You can use a different. It's not a question of kind of word which you are choosing. It is a question of thought which you wanted to express. So this is a scattered versus organized. Okay. Here they have says constructed versus unconstructed. Terminology is different. Now look at here again, this little drop of water on the leaf. The contrast is in location and positioning. The transparent drop of water against the green background of the leaf provides visual contrast. The drop isolated on a leaf further contrasts with the general image of a water body in our mind. Water, what we normally see is flowing, not in a confinement, but here it is confined into a small drop of water. So the shape of the contours of the leaf work as a balancing element and adds interest to the composition. जैसे हमने पहले बात की है, अभी और इसको थोड़ा और डिटेल में हम लोग देखेंगे कि बैलेंस का क्या मतलब है. व्हाट इज द बैलेंस? बैलेंस बोलते हैं साइकिल पे एक आदमी जा रहा है चलता हुआ. मैं पहली बार जब आप देखते हो तो आपको बड़ा सरप्राइज लगता है कि ये आदमी गिर क्यों नहीं रहा. दो पहिए पे चला रहा है और वो, अब वैसे साइकिल को खड़ा कर दो तो नहीं खड़ी हो सकती. Until unless you put it on a stand, then you give a balance to it. But if you just put a cycle on the road, it will fall. It doesn't have a balance. But when a person is riding on the bicycle, what he's trying to do is balancing it. Neither it fall this side nor it fall that side. Similarly, the tightrope walker also try to balance with his stick. He can also fall, but he try to balance what he does as a cyclist. ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग इमेज है इसके अंदर. दिस इज वन ऑफ माय फेवरेट इमेज कि हाउ somebody, two women's, one is basically just an ordinary lady and another one is a privileged who is into the hoarding of a poster and eating ice cream in a hot weather. So contrast is of the stature of the people also. Contrast is of the satisfied look versus unsatisfied look. So at a glance, the contrasting element in this image are not immediately evident. The two women looking at the camera, one standing and other in the ice cream advertisement, are from contrasting walk of life, which I said well-off versus ordinary life. This contrast is emphasized by the different expression of two women, the women sitting casually and the children playing in the water, and sand become a natural background. The non-interaction of the natural background with these two elements intensify the interest. मैं दोबारा से पढ़ता हूँ last sentence. The non-interaction of the natural background with these two elements intensify the interest. Non-interactive in the sense एक पोस्टर में लेडी है, वो कोई बात तो नहीं कर रही उससे, right? It is a static image, but give you a feeling of illusion of life. ऐसा नहीं मरा हुआ आदमी लेटा हुआ है वहां पे, right? Both are live, but she is more interactive. मतलब there is a life and that is a dead as such because it is an image. कोई आदमी वहां बोलने नहीं लग जाएगा. Frame within a frame भी एक दूसरा आइडिया है ये. Frame within a frame का भी आइडिया है. As I said, in a photograph, you need to look for various elements. तो आपसे फोटोग्राफ एप्रिसिएशन पूछा जाएगा वहां पे 10 मार्क्स का 8 मार्क्स का, तो उसमें एक ही चीज नहीं होगी, हो सकता है उसमें 4 चीजें, कुछ 5वीं चीज भी हो सकती है जो आप पकड़ ना पाए. तो क्या आप उसके अंदर पकड़ पाते हैं, दैट इज द होल गेम ऑफ द एग्जामिनर, व्हाट यू आर एबल टू कैच इट. हाँ जी, अगेन two birds, look at here in terms of contrast. The color contrast is there, white versus red. Red you can see very prominently, and the white is also prominent. Otherwise the background is almost like a gray background. बोलिए. Correct. So one is about to fly, another is walking on the ground. Another is walking on the ground. This is a case of contrast in action, that is about to fly and that is just walking. So both these elements are similar. One bird is captured in action while the other is static. Color contrast is also visible in the color of the birds and the background. Background is plain as well as So contrast among each other in terms of their body parts and contrast with the background. मान लो ये red के against होते, पीछे अगर red होता है, पीछे white होता मान लीजिए, then it would not be a contrast image for the white because prominently it is white. Prominently it is white. So anything which is a white, अगर पीछे कोई धोती मान लो बिछी होती किसी की, उसके ऊपर ये birds चल रहे होते, then it would not be contrasty in terms of overall. Now look at here. The pure contrast in terms of the people who are wearing red and somebody who's wearing white. That's A. So both, one is an ordinary, another people are more religious. One person is an ordinary person, and other people are religious. So there is a contrast of nature of people as well as contrast of the color. So old man in white against a group of people dressed in saffron is the most visible contrast in the picture. Visible contrast. जो चीज एकदम से पकड़ में आती है, color contrast you can also say. The contrast is further enhanced by the fact that a person appears larger than, ये perspective की जो हमने बात की थी पहले, ये दूसरे शब्दों में उसको बोल रहा है. The contrast is further enhanced by the fact that the person appears larger than the rest because of the perspective. तो हमने पहले बात की है perspective की कि wide angle shot से closer to the subject in the foreground. और third जो मैंने आपको बताया वो ये other people are more religious nature and this is not a defined religious. छोटी मोटी उसने भी बांधी हुई है, अगर ध्यान से देखोगे थोड़ा सा तो वो भी पंडित वाला जो कैटेगरी है, चोटी हर एक आदमी के लिए नहीं होती है. तुम लोग देखो हमारी चोटी है कोई, तो here you see the chutiya of this person means it reflect the religious nature also, but not in a organized way. एक आदमी सैफ्रॉन लेके पहना हुआ है, एक आदमी सिंपल अपना उठ के वहां पे आके बैठ गया है, सुनने भाषण जो हो रहा है. Again, look at the small versus, ये बैलेंस भी एक्ट है इसके अंदर. और जो है you can also see the big rock versus the small rocks over here. So this is the case of various contrast. A contrast is established through number of numbers, one rock in the sea against the number numerous on the shore. The contrast color is visible because of the white surf created by the waves against the background of the sea and sky. The contrast in size is also present as one notices small rocks on the shore against the large rocks. The line of the horizon and the lines created by the surf work as defining lines and add interest to the photograph. एक वो standard language है उसका, add interest to the photograph. तो इस टाइप की भी आप एक लैंग्वेज जो है प्लान कर सकते हो तो किसी भी फोटोग्राफ में लग जाती है. जेनरिक बोलते हैं इसे. जैसे हम लोग जब छोटे थे तो 9th और 10th में हमारे पास इंग्लिश का एक सब्जेक्ट होता था, तो उसमें हमारा जो टीचर था उसको पता था ये सब लोग इतने सारे क्वेश्चन याद नहीं रख पाएंगे, तो एक जनरल क्वेश्चन जो है लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन के तरह से वो करवा देता कि कोई भी क्वेश्चन आए 10 मार्क्स का उसमें यही आंसर लिखना है, कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो उसमें ये आंसर. तो उसका एक फॉर्मूला था ये कि भाई कोई भी क्वेश्चन आएगा बोर्ड के एग्जाम में, अगर वो 10 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन है, लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन है, तो उसका आंसर यहाँ से चालू कर दो. तो वो इस टाइप से आंसर बनाता था वो, तो उसमें सब कुछ जो है आ जाता. तो जेनरिक जिसको बोलते हैं, जैसे इसका लाइन है एड इंटरेस्ट टू द फोटोग्राफ. अब ये किसी भी फोटोग्राफ में किसी भी चीज के लिए अप्लाई की जा सकती है. कोई भी चीज जो है दैट कैन एक्ट एज ए एड इंटरेस्ट टू द इमेज, तो वो किसी भी एलिमेंट पे लगाया जा सकता है. तो कुछ इस टाइप के सेंटेंसेस भी आप लोग प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं व्हिच कैन बी एनीवेयर. Again, something in the foreground looks bad, as I said earlier, but why I have kept this image? Because again, it is about the colors. This is evident contrast in hues in this image. Hue is a technical word, so this is a good idea to use these words. The bright red color and contrast against the tints and shadows of green in the background. A contrast in intensity and the contrast of value are visible in this composition. ये एक बहुत अच्छा फोटोग्राफ है, अगर इसको जरा ध्यान से देखोगे आप लोग को कि बैल के सींग है. अभी एक और फोटोग्राफ है जो मैं आपको बाद में दिखाऊंगा कि बैल के सींग के बीच में एक आदमी की खोपड़ी जो है उसने कंपोज किया है फोटोग्राफ में. तो किस तरीके से जो सब्जेक्ट है आपका उसके अंदर आपको इसके अंदर एक रिदम भी है. अगर आप उसका फ्लो देखेंगे सींग का, इट इज नॉट ए स्ट्रेट, इट इज ए रिदमिक कर्विली. So two principles are dominant in this image. The first is the contrast of the dark form against the lighter background. The lack of detail of the form lends a sense of mystery. As I said in the beginning, shadow also creates a sense of mystery to the image, which helps retain the viewer's attention for a longer duration. Secondly, rhythm, जो मैंने अभी आपको बताया, एक flow जो है इसके अंदर दिखाई देता है आपको. Secondly, the rhythm can be seen in the form of the dark horns. The outline creates the illusion of growth. Outline creates illusion of the growth in the sense कि एक छोटा है और एक जो है बड़ा है. Because of the distance you can get a feel of that. ये भी एक एग्जांपल है पर्सपेक्टिव का, अगर देखा जाए थोड़ा सा ध्यान से, तो फोरग्राउंड वर्सेस बैकग्राउंड. फिर ह्यूमन बीइंग वर्सेस एनिमल, बोथ आर कंट्रास्ट टू ईच अदर, दो बोथ आर having a life, both are being, but different kind of beings. One which is a conscious, another which is unconscious. कोई गधा जो है सोच सकता है कि मैं स्विट्जरलैंड में जाके घास खाऊंगा? नहीं. कोई गधा नहीं सोच सकता कि मैं जो है इलाहाबाद में जाके घास खाऊंगा. अगर आपको इलाहाबाद में जाके रेस्टोरेंट में खाना खाना है तो कल आप ट्रेन पकड़ के इलाहाबाद जा सकते हैं और वहां पे रेस्टोरेंट में खाना खा सकते हैं. The contrast here is associated in nature. Often image associated stem from the socio-cultural context. Here the word network is seen in contrast with the covered faces of man. A donkey, considered a primitive mode of transportation, walking on a man-made road intensifies the contrast in the picture. This is a good example of the image with multiple interpretation. Network versus technology. Look at it here again. लोग साइकिल पे चल के जा रहे हैं, वो अपना पैदल घूमता हुआ जा रहा है. So these are some of the images where multiple meaning of contrast are being explained. जो लोग समझदार हैं वो इसमें से एक नोट्स बनाएंगे अपने कि 3 या 4 या 5 टाइप के किस टाइप के कंट्रास्ट हो सकते हैं. And if there is something like that in the image, they will pick up those 4 or 5 points or 2 point or 3 point which is there in the image and describe. वहां आपको कितना समझ आता है उस चीज का इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं है, आप कितना समझा पाते हैं, that is important. If you are not able to explain to the examiner in your writing, then it has no point. So point number 1, point number 2, point number 3, one need to write in this manner. Otherwise, there is a less possibility that you will get the good marks. More the point form you write, more there is a possibility that you get the good marks. Okay, so this is one thing. I'll just share another file now quickly. So this is the contrast. We'll move little further now. Something called rhythm. ये भी एक abstract concept है rhythm का, but ये music वाला rhythm नहीं है, but it is something like that. हाँ जी, किसी को कुछ पूछना है तो जल्दी से आप पूछ सकते हैं, नहीं पूछना है तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं. Okay guys, so again a very abstract concept. फ्रेमिंग के अंदर जब भी कोई आप फ्रेम करते हो तो ये सब चीजें डायरेक्टर को भी समझ आनी चाहिए. डायरेक्टर को समझ नहीं आएगी तो कैमरामैन को आप नहीं समझा पाएंगे. That's very important. First you need to understand what is there, why you are composing something like this. It is a statement by Vilmos Zsigmond, one of the Oscar-winning cinematographer, that he stopped working with Spielberg because he knows more about cinematography than he knows. It's a compliment to the Steven Spielberg. So composition, I believe, is the sense of, is a department of direction, and modifying that composition to make it better is the job of cinematographer. So we are going to talk about the rhythm. Music के अंदर कॉन्सेप्ट जो है वो एक अलग है, और सिनेमेटोग्राफी के अंदर कोई बोले इसमें रिदम कहाँ है तो आप उसको रिदम दिखा नहीं सकते. बट यू कैन फील दैट आफ्टर a certain amount of practicing, certain amount of understanding those kind of images कि इसमें कोई रिदम है या नहीं. तो एक चीज जो तुम लोग महसूस करोगे कि not always there has to be a movement. रिदम का मतलब नहीं है कि उसमें मूवमेंट होना चाहिए, यहाँ पे एक मूवमेंट को कैप्चर किया गया है. But the rhythm is more of people You look at the photographs, for example, how the bigger, then they become smaller. The direction also change, and then there is a flow, and then there is a line. So a lot of things are there in this photograph. But once we talk about from the rhythm point of view, you see some kind of curvilinear path being created by this movement. So the motion of the swing suggests a circular movement. The visual progression in the size of the people on the swing and the spacing between them enhance the rhythm. अब वो rhythm कैसे बढ़ रही है या घट रही है, वो सब इसने बहुत अच्छा describe किया हुआ है. The visual progression in the size of the people. लोग छोटे foreground में जो है वो बड़ा है, और जो background में जब लोग पहुंच गए तो वो छोटे हो. क्यों? क्योंकि perspective का खेल है इसके अंदर भी. Wide angle shot है, जो आदमी foreground में दिखाई दे रहा है वो ज्यादा prominently दिखाई देगा, जो background में दिखाई दे रहा है वो prominently उतना नहीं दिखाई देगा. So the visual progression in the size of the people on the swing and the spacing between them enhances the rhythm. यहाँ पे देखो space आपको ज्यादा लग रहा है, और जैसे जैसे लोग बीच तक पहुंचे वो space जो है आपको छोटा नजर आएगा, फिर धीरे धीरे space जो है बढ़ रहा है. So from increasing it becomes almost adjacent to not there, and then it slowly increases. Okay. Again, here is an image. If you look at it, how these lines would create a rhythm. How these lines are creating a rhythm, and it is taken with a telephoto lens. You can see that the background is blurred. These are the things you need to explain. The depth of field, indirectly you need to explain that this is being taken with a telephoto lens. So आपको ये पता है कि telephoto lens क्या होता है, because the depth of field is not there, the background is blurred, and hence it has a shallow depth of field, and the subject stands out from the background. Background is not relevant. Okay. So here you can define the rhythm in lines is contrasted by the form. अब ये form क्या है, ये भी एक बड़ा चक्कर है. हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया था कि what is the form and what is the style. Form and style in filmmaking. For example, here the form is considered with the lines, graphic form. When we say circular, the object is circular. Or when we say elliptical, ellipse is a form in terms of shape. Here the form means also shape. Cinema mein shape wala chakkar nahi hai, because it is geometry we are talking about here. So the rhythm in lines is contrasted by the form and the activity. There is visible force in the lines formed by the thread that create a sense of movement. ऐसा लग रहा है चल रही है. Sense of movement. Out of focus to focus is another element which helps these rhythm to be perceived better. अगर मान लो सारा कुछ फोकस में होता बैकग्राउंड के अंदर, तो आपको वो चीज उतना प्रोमिनेंटली नहीं महसूस होती. The single hand in the frame as a stopping point for the lines. कई बार देखा होगा आपने, अगर किसी ने प्लास्टिक की मशीन देखी हो कि प्लास्टिक कैसे बनता है, प्लास्टिक का कोई भी ऑब्जेक्ट जो है, तो वो पुरानी प्लास्टिक जो होती है उसमें गलती है, फिर उससे धीरे छोटा छोटा थ्रेड्स बनता है उससे, और उस थ्रेड्स को पानी में से निकाल के एक आदमी हाथ से पकड़े. Because I've seen that happening, so it reminds me of that. So it becomes hard also, those small threads, and then they enter into the machine, and then they get into a shape, whatever shape they have to fall. Then we get into a small that dana, we call it, as a grains, and then the grain is being used into those mold. So how those grains are being made? These lines are being held into the water, this melted plastic. So it reminds me of that. अगर आप कभी मांझा देखें बरेली के, अगर कभी आप जाएं तो बाहर बरेली के एंट्री पे ही आपको बहुत सारी जो है, बहुत लंबी जो है मांझा बनाने की जो है, उसका कलर, उसके ऊपर वो जो लगाते हैं, वो जो ग्लास का जो मटेरियल होता है जिसकी वजह से उसके अंदर कड़क पैदा होती है. That sometimes people do it with the hand also, and it's a movement over there. So this is more or less something like that. Again, this is a very static shot. If you look at it carefully, it is a static shot, but why there is a rhythm in this one, that is being explained here very beautifully. The angle, ये low angle shot भी है, अगर ध्यान से देखोगे थोड़ा सा, low level है basically, low angle नहीं कहेंगे इसको, low level बोलेंगे, क्योंकि axis जो है lens का parallel to the ground की. Axis tilt होगा तब, if it is making an angle with the horizon, then you can call it as a low angle. This is a low level shot, but these wooden logs are pointing towards upward, and that's why it is giving a feeling of a low angle, but actually it is a low level shot. Okay, so be careful when you describe that. The angle from which the photograph is taken makes all the logs coverage at a similar point, converging at a similar point. एक जगह से ऐसा लग रहा है ये निकल के आ रही है. If one looks at the contour of the logs, there is a sense of movement. There is also a contrast of light between the subject and the background, which gives the subject prominence. दोबारा देख लीजिए, थोड़ा ऊपर से लाइट आ रहा है, व्हाइट बैकग्राउंड है, प्लेन बैकग्राउंड है, कुछ ज्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग नहीं है. यहाँ पर क्या है? It's more of yellowish, dark yellow in the bottom, and on the top obviously it's more brighter. तो shade of yellow gives the different. वो पीछे कुछ लोग भी दिखाई दे रहे हैं आउट ऑफ फोकस, से इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, ना भी हो तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा उससे. As I said that these are the element of relief. पहले मैंने बोला था कोई भी चीज बैकग्राउंड में आउट ऑफ फोकस अगर है तो उससे थोड़ा डेप्थ का फील जो है आता है. मान लीजिए इन तीन लोगों को उड़ा दो, वहां से तीन लोगों को उड़ा दो, तो आपको महसूस नहीं होगा कि वहां पर पीछे क्या है. White जो है is merging with the sky, but just because three heads out of focus in the background are there, so you get a feeling of relief. ये मैंने पहले भी आपसे बात की थी. Feeling of relief, how can you create artificially in a photograph is also important. As a cinematographer, it is your responsibility to get a frame in which there is a relief. हाँ जी. Again, it's a simple photograph from the photography point of view. But देखो बैकग्राउंड में देखो एक छोटी सी बोट आपको सी में दिखाई दे रही है ना सब लोगों को. और इतनी छोटी है कि ध्यान से नहीं देखोगे तो नहीं दिखाई देगी, बट अगर थोड़ी बड़ी होती है तो थोड़ा और जो है आसान हो जाता है. बट if this boat thing is not there, for example, again the element of relief is missing. Element of relief is missing. So try to inculcate these kind of things, small things, whenever you are picturizing. Long back, I shot a music video which I told you. It was near the gateway of India in Bombay, and this mill called, which is a dilapidated mill basically, has, you see in the water those these kind of boats comes at a one particular point. So if you shoot at, if you know already, this is one of the reason why we go for a ride, to know exactly what will happen at what time. वो जो boats हैं वो शाम को आएंगी, सुबह नहीं आएंगी, या सुबह बहुत ज्यादा होंगी, शाम को थोड़ी कम हो जाएगी, दिन में बिल्कुल नहीं है. So if you go and do a recce at a location from the day to morning till evening, not only you come to know the position of the sun, you also come to know the activity which is going to happen in the area. If you wanted to inculcate those many boats, for example, then you have to come in the morning where the people are also busy unloading the fishes and all that. But if you're not interested in that, you want some boats in the background, then 4 o'clock is the time when you see 7-8 boats over there. But if you shoot at 12 o'clock, there's no boat. So timing is very important. This is one of the reasons why people go to do recce, because activities, you will come to know what activity would happen at what point. पूछ सकते हैं डायरेक्शन वाले लोग जो सो रहे हैं, वो लिखते रहो ध्यान से. हाँ जी. The changing size of the lines and the perspective coupled with the dark light contrast creates a perception of rhythm. ये बहुत बड़ा abstract term है, इसलिए इसको कैसे define करोगे आप फोटोग्राफ के अंदर, that is important for you people whosoever has to write the examination. The changing size of the lines and the perspective coupled with a dark light contrast creates a perception of rhythm. समझ आ रहा है आप लोगों को? हाँ जी. अब एक बड़ा सिंपल सा फोटोग्राफ है. अगर इस लीव्स को ध्यान से देखो, इसका ये डायगोनल एंगुलर छोटे छोटे जो ये एंगुलर शेप के अंदर जो इसका साइज है, that create a little rhythm. But if you look at the high contrast image like this, then you get the feel very clearly. There also you get the feel clearly, but here it is more of a lines. So the changing size of the triangles on both the sides of the leaf is an example of rhythm which follows a geometrical shape in an organic element. The contrast between a dark background and a light leaf in the foreground helps to accentuate the rhythm. The asymmetric arrangement of triangles create an interesting sense of movement in the picture. Asymmetric अरेंजमेंट ऑफ ट्राइंगल। क्या मतलब हुआ? एग्जैक्टली सब ट्राइंगल एक जैसे नहीं। अभी सिमिट्री की भी बात करेंगे हम लोग अलग अलग पीपीटी के अंदर कि हाउ द सिमिट्री इन द फोटोग्राफ इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। देयर इज अ सिमिट्री और नॉट, लाइक इफ ए ह्यूमन बीइंग इज कट फ्रॉम द सेंटर, फ्रॉम द आउटसाइड you look similar. There is a symmetrical over there. Inside may not be the same because heart is one side, it may not have another side. So all those kind of things are important. Some of the rest of the part of the body also there are. So these are things, again a very interesting photograph where this rhythm is there. You see how these size placement of the these faces, how they're looking into the camera, the girl in the background, how tilted her face is. Everybody is not looking into the camera except this one little girl on the extreme right. Everybody else is looking into the camera. So how do you define this? The changing size of the face. पहले भी हमने बात की थी, asymmetrical की बात की थी, वहां पे साइज की बात की थी। यहाँ भी साइज जो है चेंज हो रहा है। फोरग्राउंड में जो है कैमरे के पास है उसका फेस बड़ा होगा, जो कैमरे से दूर है उसका फेस छोटा होगा। So the changing size of the face, arrangement in a sine wave like manner creates a sense of rhythm. The varying degree of smiles on the faces contribute to the enhancement of rhythm. दो चीजें इसके अंदर, लोगों का स्माइल प्लस द साइज ऑफ द फेस। किसी को ज्यादा हंस रहा है, कोई कम दांत फाड़ रहा है। This is a very obvious example of the rhythm, but at the same time the contrast also. Contrast in terms of light and shade, contrast in terms of the background versus foreground. So you could see, now again you have to define this. The angle of the shot capture the waves like curve of the bench which creates the rhythm. A sense of movement is perceived due to the arrangement of wooden slate. तो बात क्या हो रही है यहाँ पे? सेंस ऑफ मूवमेंट। तो आपको कोई मूवमेंट का सेंस पकड़ में आता है, वो इंपॉर्टेंट। किसी भी चीज को जब आप देख रहे हो, तो अगर आपने अभी जो हमने डिस्कस किया है उसके अंदर मूवमेंट का सेंस आपको पकड़ में आ रहा है, या कोई चीज ऐसा लग रहा है कि कुछ चल रही है। फिजिकली तो फोटोग्राफ में कोई नहीं चल रहा है, तो साइकिल है तो चल रही नहीं रहेगी तुम्हें। साइकिल पे एक आदमी अगर फोटोग्राफ में है तो चल ही रहा होगा, खड़ा हुआ तो नहीं होगा सेंटर में लेके, करेक्ट? So there the sense of movement is there, but sense of movement can also be perceived in a static object. Question क्या है? Can you perceive a sense of movement in a static object? That is what this photograph is concentrating about. तो जब आप फ्रेम करते हैं तो इन सब चीजों को आप देखेंगे और मार्क करेंगे उसके अंदर के कहाँ क्या है। किसी आदमी को कुछ ज्यादा अच्छा ना लग रहा हो, अब यही फोटोग्राफ मान लीजिए अगर आप इस शॉट से चालू करते हैं, एक आदमी बेंच पे बैठा हुआ है, तो इफ यू टेक ए शॉट व्हेन ही इज ऑलरेडी सिटिंग ओवर देयर फॉर एग्जांपल, इट विल नॉट गिव यू अ सेंस ऑफ रिदम। कैसे? बिकॉज द frame is not empty. But if the frame is empty and then the person comes and sits over there, then you create that sense of rhythm. Okay, you already have shown the bench as empty. Then he enters and sits, so that is being covered. Because if somebody is sitting over here, the entire frame is covered. Okay. Always when we will talk about the entry exit into a frame, whenever we take a shot, I also discuss that it is always a good idea to make a person enter into the frame and possibly exit in the frame, because in the editing we can control the timing and control the duration of the shot, whether we want it or we don't want it. Hanji, again, basically steps, but step obviously कोई आदमी चल के जाएगा इस पे, but अभी आपको कोई चलता हुआ आदमी नहीं नजर आ रहा है, but still you get the feeling of rhythm. So how you, in a static object, the feeling of movement is there, then you can call that it as a sense of rhythm. The staircase leading down creates a sense of movement. ये sense of movement जो है keyword है description के अंदर, sense of movement जो है, so these kind of keyword you have to write it down, and वो जो मैंने आपको formula बताया था कि जब भी आपको वो define करना होगा, you use the sentence and add that in that particular context which the photograph is going to be discussed. So the staircase leading down creates a sense of movement towards the center. The radial lines of the step amplify the circular movement. It's very, very important how create effect. वहां 50 लाइन में कोई लिख के आ गया, उसका कोई मतलब नहीं। आपने वही बात कितने कम शब्दों के अंदर समझाने की कोशिश की है, वो इम्पोर्टेंट है. There are two important things. One is how many points you catch in a photograph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And how in a limited words you explain that over there. बोले जा रहे हो, beating around the bush is not required. Because it is not number of words you are using. It is in a how limited words, how laconic you are in your expression, that is the right term, whatever you want to say. Okay. Suppose if the same thing is being explained into 100 words, then the meaning is lost. Meaning is lost. So point and limited number of words which are used to describe that point to clarify to the examiner. Hanji. Look at this person carefully. It looked like as if one eye is very prominent. The pose, the way he is, and this is also example of high angle, which we had discussed earlier over there. And then you see background is also the colors are very, very pastel kind of colors, not very bright colors are there. So these are a term which you should be able to define in terms of the colors. But this has a rhythmic movement of the contour. Now, it's very important thing how he uses this term, rhythmic movement of the contours. Line, वैसा line नहीं है, दिख नहीं रहा है कि ये line जा रहा है जैसे पहले वाले photograph के अंदर. The lines are very clear, the steps lines are clear, but here the lines are being created by the contour of what human face. So the rhythmic movement of the contour leads, lines lead to the man's eye. Focus कहाँ? Leading line की हमने पहले बात की थी. इस पूरी photograph को जब ध्यान से देखो तो इसमें सबसे important क्या है? उस एक आदमी की आंख, जहां पे आपकी अटेंशन जाती है. क्यों? क्योंकि अदर आई इज मोर लेस क्लोज्ड, मोर लेस क्लोज्ड. इट्स वेरी डार्क. मे बी द पर्सन इज हाफ ब्लाइंड. द वे द मुस्टैच, अब इस आदमी का मुस्टैच नहीं है, मान, इफ इट इज अ प्लेन फेस लाइक माइन फॉर एग्जांपल, देन विल यू गेट दैट मूवमेंट, सेंस ऑफ रिदम एंड मूवमेंट? यू विल नॉट. और इसका जो मूंछ का छोटा सा एक जो इसने ताव लगा रखा है, जो थोड़ा सा कड़कनेस है जो है, अगर सैल्वाडोर डाली का फेस देखोगे तुम तो उसकी मूछें जो है एकदम से दो मूछें एकदम से खड़ी हुई मूछें नहीं रहती. सैल्वाडोर डाली का फोटोग्राफ देखो कभी जिंदगी में. कल हम थोड़ा एक दो फोटो एक पेंटिंग की बात करेंगे कल थोड़ा सा, तो किस तरीके से इस सेंस ऑफ मूवमेंट इन द मुस्टैचेस यू कैन फील. तो ये बहुत अच्छा टर्म है, द रिदमिक मूवमेंट ऑफ द कंटूर. मूवमेंट ऑफ द कंटूर्स लाइन लीड to the man's eye, the main focus of the picture. The focal point is further accentuated because of the eyes contact of the subject with the viewer. अगर ये आदमी कैमरे की तरफ नहीं देख रहा होता, ये नीचे जमीन की तरफ देख रहा होता, मान लो वो नीचे सेब है, संतरा है, कुछ और है, उसका औजार है, तो खाना रखा हुआ कुछ भी है, because it's directly hitting you, so it is connecting with the viewer. इसलिए फोटोग्राफ के अंदर कौन आदमी कहां देख रहा है, बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. एज ए डायरेक्टर ऑल्सो जब हम ब्लॉकिंग की बात करते हैं, शॉट के अंदर ब्लॉक कर रहे हैं, ब्लॉक का क्या मतलब है? ब्लॉकिंग का मतलब यह है कि कौन किसको देखेगा, कब देखेगा, कहां देखेगा. वन ऑफ द एक्टर विच आई रिमेंबर हु नेवर लुक इनटू द एक्टर्स आईज. कैन यू टेल द नेम ऑफ दैट एक्टर? हिज नेम इज राजकुमार. राजकुमार का कोई भी फिल्म देखो, वो तुमसे बात करेगा तो उधर देख के बात. वो एक्टर की आंख में बहुत रेयरली you will see him looking into the another actor's eyes or looking into the even camera also. Most of his shots he always look here, there, at the wall, at somewhere else. So in one of the interview I read that Dilip Kumar asked him very specifically that deliver these dialogue while looking into my eyes, because it was difficult for him to do that. He was very comfortable. Also Manoj Kumar. If you look at the Manoj Kumar song, very carefully you look at it, he will not look into the camera. He will not look into the actor's eyes. But not always. 90% of the time, Raj Kumar, when he is performing, he would look into the here and there, but never into the eyes of the another actor. So eye contact is a very important point. This is what that photograph wanted to mention. So again, is a sense of rhythm is very clear in terms of the movement. And ये blur photography का example है. इसको एक multiple exposure भी बोला जाता है photography की language के अंदर, जहाँ पे एक ही आदमी का different pose जो है shoot किया जाता है. तो इस टाइप के फोटोग्राफ किसी जमाने में पॉसिबल होते थे डीएसएलआर कैमरा के अंदर. आज के टाइम में मुश्किल है, क्योंकि वो इमेज जो है आगे बढ़ जाती है. Once it is being clicked, it has gone to somewhere. Until unless you do it in a Photoshop. Earlier, you hold that image. There's a button over there. We call it as a multiple exposure button. You hold that button, then click. So the image is being embedded on the negative, but the picture has not moved further. It is still at the same position. So you click again. Normally, there is a technique behind it. Is the area which is being already exposed, and there is another area which is not being exposed. If it is a dark, suppose you are shooting a performer, dancer, so there may be a dark background. So normally, whenever you do the multiple exposure, you see to it the background should be dark. So next photograph, when you click at a position, you will see the image was as good as not exposed. Negative was as good as not exposed because there was no light hitting. Now the character's light is hitting the image, so you will have a second exposure, third. I have shot many photographs for the dance performances in a multiple exposure. This is one of the technique. Very good photograph, you will get it. So you can see here the movement of hand. So the movement of hand portrays a sense of rhythm. Here the rhythm is perceived better in the blurred lines between the more defined images of the hand, conveying a continuation and giving a sense of direction to the movement. These terms, how you define these things, are very important for those people who has to write the examination. Those who don't have to write, they can understand. The understanding is also important, but at the same time, since examiner, you are not going to be physically present there, it is your selection of the word which matters. Again, here you see that movement, sense of movement. Again, the color also, the sky color. The flamingo in this picture looks similar. So each of them becomes one element of a rhythm. There is a curvilinear path being formed by the flying birds, which makes the movement rhythmic. Also, the curvilinear shape of the birds enhances the rhythm. दो तीन चीजें इसने बहुत अच्छे शब्दों में इस्तेमाल किया है. What enhances something? जैसे icing on the cake, क्या करता है? It enhances the beauty. Is icing on the cake is enhancing the beauty. खाने में उसमें कुछ मजा ज्यादा नहीं आता कि अगर वो आइसिंग ना हो तो उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा in terms of taste. But when you look at something, these things matters a lot. हाँ जी, it's a very simple photograph. But what is interesting about that is this lines and how this V shape is getting smaller and smaller. Bigger V, small V, small V, and at the end of the day, it is the background also which is out of focus. So it is a photograph in which there is still some depth of field is there, but again it is shot with a telephoto lens, not with a wide angle lens. Wide angle lens होता तो ये पीछे का background में जो blur दिख रहा है वो आपको नहीं दिखाई देता. So these are the various elements जो आपको discuss करने हैं वहाँ पे. The formation of leaf pattern creates rhythm. The plant's growth is a metaphor for rhythm in life. ये एक बहुत interesting statement है last में जो इसने लगाया है. The plant's growth is a metaphor for rhythm in life. Life के अंदर भी rhythm होती है. ये इस पॉइंट को इसने हाईलाइट किया. वैसे भी जो रिदम वर्ड है वो बड़ा एब्स्ट्रैक्ट वर्ड है, कोई डिफाइन नहीं कर सकते मैथमेटिकल टर्म में कि डिफाइन द रिदम इन मैथमेटिकल वर्ड्स. हर आदमी का डेफिनेशन अलग अलग होगा. बट सबों से पूछा जाए कि डिफाइन द ग्रेविटेशनल लॉ, मोर और लेस एवरीबॉडी वुड स्पीक इन अ सेम लैंग्वेज. अगेन दिस इज अ पीकॉक taken a shot from the back side. Not a very interesting photograph in terms of the photograph, but to illustrate the point, this is a very good photograph where you can see these lines. The radial lines of the feather creates a sense of movement. This is a good example of regular rhythm. Repetition of element with a defined interval creates rhythm. This establishes not only a sense of movement but also builds a pattern and texture. बड़ा important शब्द है. This also builds a pattern and texture. तो हमने पहले pattern की बात की है. Repetition of something. पैटर्न है, उसके अंदर कुछ ना कुछ रिपीट होता है. और टेक्सचर की जो बात कर रहे हैं, ये टेक्सचर दो टाइप का टेक्सचर होता है, एक वो जो आप फील कर सकते हो इमीडिएटली। एक प्लेन सरफेस है, उस पर कोई टेक्सचर नहीं है, एक कोई दूसरा आपका जो पेपर है उसके ऊपर आप टेक्सचर जो है इजीली महसूस कर सकते हैं। जैसे मैंने पहले भी बताया था डायरेक्शन वालों को कि ऑन दिस वॉल देयर इज नथिंग ओवर देयर, इट्स अ वेरी प्लेन, बट इफ यू यूज अ रोलर of Asian Paint or some different kind of company which manufactures that, it will give a texture to the surface. So this is also very important, that can you get the, if there is a texture in the object, do you seek that texture in the image? That is also important. वो जो texture है वो क्या आपने फोटोग्राफ में भी पकड़ा? फोटोग्राफ में तो आपने नहीं पकड़ा, because the lighting was not that kind. So that's why the side lighting is considered as important whenever we want to highlight a texture in a photograph. आप कभी भी कोई फोटोग्राफ कोई ट्री का मॉर्निंग में लेंगे तो उसका जो टेक्सचर है, अगर साइड की लाइट होती है जो कि मॉर्निंग और लेट इवनिंग के अंदर, इफ इट इज हिटिंग द ट्री करेक्टली एट द पोजीशन ऑफ द बोथ ऑफ देम आर करेक्ट, यू कैन गेट द टेक्सचर वेरी क्लियरली। हाँ जी, तो ये जो टर्म्स इस्तेमाल किए गए हैं इसमें, ये सब सारे के सारे टर्म्स जो है आप अपने तरीके से एक स्टैंडर्ड फॉर्मेट के अंदर 5-6 लाइनें अलग अलग 1 2 3 4 5 हर आदमी जिसको भी एग्जाम देना है वहां पे वो अपना लिख के जाएगा, पहले से तैयार होनी चाहिए, खट से उसको उठाओ और वहां पे चिपका दो। अगेन हियर यू नो दैट these are the wood cutters, and obviously 2 people are not keep holding all the time, though it is shot with a shutter speed of a high shutter speed. That's why the blur of the scenes is not there, otherwise it would have been a blurred photograph. Now this is explanation. The design principle may not always exist objectively, it can also be subjective. Design element की बात करिए यहाँ पर, some of the element in the picture portray rhythm, yet it can be implied because of the action of the men who are engaged in the sawing. Their expression shows that it is a continuous activity. The viewer's knowledge of the back and forth movement leaves an impression of rhythm in the mind. ये बड़ा important चीज है, हर एक को ये पता है कि भाई पकड़ के तो नहीं खड़े होंगे यहाँ पर, चल ही रहा होगा आगे और पीछे, तो already there is a image of that object. It is always moving front back. So it is saying the viewer knowledge of the back and forth movement leaves an impression of rhythm in his mind. तो ये बाकी का जो है quickly मैं पढ़ के बता देता हूं आपको. Look at the hands position. Look at the hands position. So rhythm that is experienced here is the sound of hands beating the chest. अब वो पता नहीं लग रहा है क्योंकि आप कभी मुहर्रम में जाएं तो इस टाइप का आपको इमेज जो है आसानी से देखने को मिल सकता है. Beating the chest, it is translated into a visual by capturing the wave-like movement of the hands. हाथ का जो wave-like movement है, that gives the feeling of rhythm. अब यहाँ static image है, but still this is an example of also the aerial perspective. Perspective जो है अलग-अलग false perspective की बात की हमने, एक perspective to create a depth. Here it is an aerial perspective. You get the depth because the clarity becomes less and less. In the foreground there is more clarity. So this curvilinear line, the gradually changing colors create a rhythm. How the gradually changing colors also can create a rhythm, this is an example. But as I said, that this is also an example of aerial perspective. Because of the air, there is air is not very clean because the moisture or maybe the dust or maybe the early morning, we call it as a mist. Mist also give a interesting feeling of the aerial perspective. So the gradually changing colors create a rhythm and the flow of the contour lines enhances it. The blue overcast eliminate any distraction of other color from breaking the rhythm. तो इसमें ब्लू का जो अभी इसमें कुछ येलो होता है पहाड़ या रेड होता है कुछ ऐसे, then it would be a break. But since it is a continuously graduate, एक बहुत अच्छा शब्द होता है, इसको बोलते हैं ग्रेडेशन. फोटोग्राफ के अंदर ग्रेडेशन का बहुत बड़ा यूज होता है. जब आप फोटोग्राफी करेंगे प्रैक्टिकल लाइट्स के साथ खास तौर पे, then you will try to create a feeling of gradation. ब्राइट एरिया है, अब धीरे धीरे डार्क होता है, या डार्क एरिया है, धीरे धीरे वो ब्राइट होता है. फोटोग्राफ में करना बड़ा आसान होता है फोटोशॉप में जाके ग्रेडेशन, पर जब प्रैक्टिकली करेंगे तो थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होता है, बट वंस यू प्रैक्टिस इट यू विल अंडरस्टैंड। सो दिस इज इन ब्रीफ gentlemen, 35 images we have explained. If you have a question you can quickly ask, if you don't have a question don't ask. Hanji, before we end this class, anybody if have a question you can quickly ask.